Hello, my name is Matthew Horney from Fort Hays State University. This is my final presentation for AEP 855, and it is called Race, Class, Access, Gender, and Equity. And I found two articles that talked about the graduation rates here in Kansas and in the United States, and also about how girls are affected in the school system and in society. So for the first presentation, it's called As Graduation Rates Rise, Focus Shifts to Dropouts. This article has an interactive map that you can go to the year 2009 to 2010. 2010 is the last year that they're able to get the data, and they're waiting for more data to come in to update it. But you can go to the state and see what color it's coded, and it tells you if they had a graduation rate over 70% or below 70%. And it's really interesting to see how the different states compare. You're going to see some patterns here in a little bit when I show you them. You might think with the changes that you see, because I mean there is a great improvement with it, that it could be because of the No Child Left Behind Act, because a lot of teachers changed the way that they taught to teach to the minority students to get them up to where the majority students are, filling their education gaps. The article goes on to explain a little bit, but let's go ahead and look at that first map. Alright, so this map is 1999 graduation rate. And over here in the corner we have 80% and higher is this dark blue color, higher than 70% is this light blue color, and then anything under 70% kind of gets into the yellows and into the oranges, and the darker the color, the more extreme it is. If you click on a state like Kansas here, it says it's 73.5%. The U.S. national average was 66.8% for students graduating from high school. And if you look, the central part of the United States has more of the blue colors, and this color right here represents 76 to 80%, and then over here we have a darker blue color which looks like 2 to 3 states, which would be 80% or higher. If you look at the state of New York, it is 64 to 67% graduated. So I mean that's a lot of students that didn't graduate if you think about it. I mean that's what, a D average. We're looking for a C average. Kansas ranked at 73.5%. And if you look over here, we have our coastal states, we have our border states right here. We have our other coast here. I mean it's mainly more in the south where we're getting the lower graduation rates. Alright, so now we're going to look at the 2010 map, and you're going to see a big difference. The national average went to 74.7%, and Kansas in the year 2010 had 80% of its high school students graduate from high school. Alright, the central states, they're still the blue color, but if you look over here, instead of being 76 to 80%, we get the darker blue colors that are showing up. That shows 80% or more graduated from high school. Instead of just a 3, we have more. And if you look, the ones that are below 70% are still near the south. We're still near the border, and we're still in the coastal areas. And these areas in the United States have a higher demographics of having minority people. You have the Indian, Native American reservations that we have here, and a lot more of the southern states. Now the next slide is going to put the two maps right by each other. So we're going to compare 1999 to 2010. And if you look, we have California. That's a really huge state. It's gone to the light blue, which is the 76%. And then the lighter blue is 70%. So I mean you can look and you can see that there has been major improvement, and it could be because No Child Left Behind, and teachers have been focusing on the minority groups, trying to fill their education gaps that they have. So that's what bullets down here we're going to go over right quick. Looking back at 1999, the states that were above 70% were mainly located in the central part of the United States and also in the north. None of the southern states were above 70%. I mean it's almost a whole perimeter, of the United States. Well, the east, the west, and the south, was less than 70%. And there's going to be a lot more immigrants that come into those areas, and a lot more minorities that are living there. We have people that cross the border from Mexico, the first time in the United States, they're non-English speaking students. So, No Child Left Behind did benefit us with concentrating on those lower students and being able to give them the resources they needed to be able to graduate. 22 states were under 70% graduating. 22 states out of 50. Well, that's almost half. The national average was 66.8%. Going here to the year 2010, we can observe a major change. Only 8 states, going from 22 down to 8. That's a big change, within the 10 years. More states are 80% or higher. In 1999, only 2 states were above 80%, whereas in 2010 we have 13 that are above 80%. Awesome improvement. The states lower than 70% are located in the south, near the border or the coast. Analyzing the information. Like I said before, the data is only available until 2010. And during that time it had increased by 8%. It's projected within the next couple of years that the national average is going to increase to 77.1% and be higher than that, and that's the highest that we've ever had in the United States. The numbers look good, but what does it mean to be a percent? 80%, well, yeah, that sounds good, but if you take the whole average of the nation, that's going to be approximately 1 million students that are not going to graduate. And with the economy that we're in, it's harder for those students to get jobs that pay well, and most likely they're not going to be going on to post-secondary school, getting a college degree, and making more income to have a higher quality of life. So the focus on education. So the last 10 years we've been focusing on how we can help those at-risk students, give them the different programs and extra support. But what about those students that has dropped out? I mean, every year, it's about 1 million students, give or take some. And if you take into consideration California, 30% of the dropouts return to school, and less than 1 out of 5 are successful in getting their diplomas. So only 30% of those 1 million students, went back into the education system, tried to better their lives, and only 1 out of 5, actually less than 1 out of 5, were successful in getting their diplomas. To me, this article was really eye-opening for me. I really thought we would have a higher graduation rate, than the 77.1. And that's what we're shooting for. The article also goes on to explain some of the demographics and talk about some of the improvements that we've been having. It takes the different demographics, Latino Americans, African Americans, and Native Americans, and it tells how they've increased or decreased. And for the most part, we're going to be seeing some increases. So, like for the Latino Americans, people from Mexico, southern areas, Puerto Rico, that kind of deal, they increased by 16% over this 10-year span and are at 68% graduation rate. Well, that's pretty good, What about the 32% of the students that didn't graduate or are not going to graduate? African Americans, it increased by 13%, which is an awesome percentage, but their graduation rate is only 62%. To me, these are alarming numbers that we really need to be focusing on. And Native Americans, they have increased by 3% during this, but 3 out of the last 5 years, they've decreased. So something has to be done to reach these other students. Every student should have a chance to receive an education, and teachers need to be committed for working with those students, but we need to make sure that we're giving them the resources that they need. If you'd like to check out this interactive map and see how it's changed through those 10 years, here's a bibliography. You can pause the presentation and go to this website, and it's a really good read. Check it out. The next article that I read was Teaching Girls to Speak Up, and this one really identified with chapter 14 in our book that we've been reading. The Desert Credit News. This is also from Education Week, and you'll see the bibliography here in a little bit, so if you want to read it the whole thing. But it starts with a quote, and it says, "Women speak up less than men do when they are outnumbered, but when women do talk, they intend to change a group's outcomes." Ania Bogu is a self-esteem expert that was a former teacher and is in charge of an empowerment program for girls. She encourages teachers to get girls more involved with classroom discussions so the discussions are more enriched and have the perspectives of a girl. Women and girls are more likely to talk about equality, children, and the poor. That's a pretty good quote, but it also shot out some facts out there that I thought were pretty interesting. It says, "The lack of women's voices in the public sends a message that women are absent partners in the collective daily life," which I really find surprising, because when I look around, I see a lot of managers in stores. Well, here in Garden City, Kansas, I see more females or more ladies in manager positions, But there are men. With the store managers mainly are men, but the assistant managers are women. Well, anyhow, here's some interesting facts that I had. 1/5 of the characters in movies and TV shows are women. 10 to 100 women are mentioned in history books. So for every 100 men, there's only 10 women mentioned. In the top literature books, only one of the top 10 authors are a woman. In the top 7 chemistry books, the pictures are mainly of men, and only 15% of them are women. And another thing I really thought was surprising is USA ranks 90th in terms of women representatives in the government. Women in leadership, chapter 14, and leadership theory and practice, 6th edition. There's a figure in there, 14.1, that compares women to men in key areas of society: educational and work attainment, and the leadership gap. So I went ahead and reconstructed that so you could see it. And right there it says educational work attainment. We have women and we have men. So in managerial professional positions, women are 50.8%, and men are 49.2%. Labor workforce in the U.S., women are 46.7%, men are 53.3%. And this one I was really surprised with. Earning bachelor's degree, 57.5% women compared to only 42.5% men. Women are leading in there. So I would think if they're leading in education, they would be leading, in the manager position. Well, the next part talks about the leadership gap. So CEOs in Fortune 500 companies, only 3% were women. 97% were men. I mean, that's not even close. So I'm really surprised with that. Holding board seats in Fortune 500 companies, 15.2% compared to 84.8%. And U.S. Congress, only 16.8% are women, and 83.2% are men. So there's not an equal representation of men and women in leadership roles. Well, the article in chapter 14 are related and discuss the issues that face girls in the classroom and women in society today. By women not being represented equally in leadership roles today, men are dominating, and companies are not reaching their full potential and do not take into consideration the woman's perspective. For society to change and for women to become more equal, changes can be made in the classroom. Even though girls could be outnumbered by boys, teachers need to find ways to empower girls and teach them to speak up for themselves and share their ideas. And when they disagree with something, to go ahead and be vocal and to be more of a leader in the classroom. This is bibliography for that last article. As a future administrator, my goal is to become a principal and to lead, not only in my school but also in my district. And I want to make sure that all groups are represented fairly in the classroom. The Latinos, the African Americans, Native Americans, Burmese, Samoans. I want every student to have that equal opportunity for an education. And I don't want people to stereotype them thinking they can't learn because they don't speak English. I want to have teachers that are qualified in those areas. And it's going to take some extra work to make sure that my teachers are qualified, but taking that extra time is really going to benefit those students' lives and my community. As for girls, I have 2 daughters, and one of my goals is to see them to be in a leadership role when they get older, and I want them to be vocal and to share their ideas, and even if they're outnumbered, I want them to share their opinions. And it's really important that not only my 2 girls but other girls in classrooms get that equal opportunity to be a leader, to share their ideas, and help out with the discussions going in the classroom. Well, this concludes my presentation for this class. I hope you enjoy the articles, and thank you for your time.